So my title is The Longhouse in Wales, Fact and Fantasy. And I want to start with fantasy first, especially the estate agent's fantasy. For me, the word longhouse belongs to a category of words like Barrabrith or Cardiff Arms Park, which promise a lot, but don't always deliver. I think that we have to start with. I think but the idea of the longhouse, it really does press a lot of buttons. It gives you a nice warm feeling of Welshness, perhaps. It's the idea of the authentically Welsh house. And estate agents, of course, know it presses buttons. And there are all sorts of unlikely houses described as longhouses in estate agents' particulars. This is a house called Uplands, which is not far from Ferryside, overlooking the estuary towards Llansteffan. It's a 3-storey Georgian mansion. It's actually a double pile mansion, you can just see it there. But the estate agents, somewhere here, say it's a Welsh longhouse. Which is preposterous. Now, so that's the fantasy, but when you see, the reality is very different. There are longhouses, and when you see them, it's often a shock. This is the last one I saw, which is in the Rhondda. It's called, locally it's called Tintilla. On the map it's called, it's Tintilla. And if you come over Rhondda Fach, over the top with Penrhys, and then down on the other side into Rhondda Fawr, it's hugging the hillside on the right. And it shows you all the classic features of the longhouse. The first feature, it's a house and cow house in range. That's crucial. It's sited down a slope, and that's again pretty critical. And the muck from the cow house, of course, drains away from the house. Very important. And in the pure form of the longhouse, you get into the house from the cow house. They're intercommunicating, but you get into the house through a door, more or less in this position, and then you go into the side of the through the side of the chimney. As you can see, this house is a wreck, and it's probably the last longhouse in the Rhondda. The farmer told me that it's a wreck because it was the victim of an arson attack. The farmer had shot 2 dogs worrying sheep, and then a few days later, someone in revenge came down and set the cow house on fire, where he had 2 dogs tied up and they burnt alive, I'm afraid. But the interesting thing is you can see, the 2 halves of the house and the way in which the house survived, even though the cow house was destroyed. So the last house, longhouse in the Rhondda, I said that the idea of the authentically Welsh house, the longhouse, does press a lot of buttons, but so far Rhondda Cynnon Taf haven't put their hands in their pockets to help restore this, and I'm afraid it probably will go down. So, longhouses do exist, but they're getting fewer and fewer. If we were to go back in time, we would see many more, especially over the sort of southern and central belt of Wales. We know this from the visual evidence left behind by the Royal Commission on Land in Wales and Monmouthshire, 1896. And the Royal Commission travelled around Wales taking evidence, and when they got to Llandilo, they commissioned an architect called David Jenkins to do a series of studies of the local farms. The Royal Commission on Land was really a royal commission into sort of land ownership and tenant farming. It is extraordinary, but at that time, up to 70% of the agricultural land in Wales was owned by the great estates. John Davis has written a magnificent article about this. But the common consequence of this was that repairs were often neglected on farmhouses, and some of the farmhouses were not only dilapidated but actually dangerous. And this is one that was sketched in the Llandilo region. You can see it's a single-storied house, thatched, and the gable end is falling out. Not only were houses in a state of disrepair, but a lot of them were completely unmodernised. And David Jenkins was commissioned to make a study of some of the unmodernised farmhouses in the Llandilo area. And these are the first professional record of the houses that we now know as longhouses. So this is Blaenwaun, Llansadwrn, house and cow house in range, single-storied, thatched. It's a small farm, only about 35 acres, something like that. In terms of plan, it has this critical factor here. The entrance into the house here is via the cow house, and that really is the crucial factor in relation to the authentic longhouse. So you've got about 5 cattle, not many cattle actually, 5 cattle stalled here. The entrance there, you go into the kitchen. It's called a living room, which is interesting because it's kind of, it's an architect's word, really, living room. But, into the kitchen. And then beyond, there's a parlour. And it's not a parlour, really, as we understand it. It's a parlour bedroom.